What other types of people similar to him have you talked to or interviewed?
Right. So he's sort of the person who's most experienced the supernatural. So there's, I've done a short and working on a feature about cryptozoologists, those who study animals that most likely don't exist, or
cryptozoologists.
Yeah. It just stands for, it's the study of unknown or hidden animals, and so Bigfoot falls into that. The Loch Ness Monster falls into that, and then animals that were once extinct and maybe could still be alive. So like the Tasmanian tiger, or have you heard of the coelacanth?
No.
That was a fish that they thought coelacanth.
Coelacanth.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was a fish that they thought went extinct millions of years ago, and then just decades ago actually found it's still alive and still thriving populations of it. It looks wild, like this wild prehistoric fish. So that would be considered like a cryptid, what they study. And then it goes as far as there's like one called the Mongolian death worm, which is sort of in between. Did you ever see that movie Tremors?
Oh, of course.
Yeah. So it's sort of like mini, or like sandworms from Dune. It's like these mini versions of that spit acid.
It's one of the most terrifying animals in all movies.
Yeah. And so these Mongolian, yak herders and desert nomads claim that they see these death worms. They're like maybe like that big.
Oh, okay.
And but they can like paralyze you, spit acid, electrocute you.
Wow.
Do psychic things. So that's like far on the hard to believe end, and then there's some that we do find creatures that we didn't think existed. Yeah.
I find it I love the UFO subject, but when I talk to people about UFOs, I often find that they also believe in Bigfoot.
Yes.
And then it kind of just ruins it for me.
There's factions though. There's some that believe they're connected, that Bigfoot is an interdimensional being.
Right.
Yeah, and then there's the real cryptozoologists. They treat it like zoology. Like it's a science. And some of them are actually like primatologists. And they hate when people connect like UFOs and Bigfoot, because to them UFOs are the crazy stupid thing, and Bigfoot's the real thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's I've heard of that, like flying saucers and UFO sightings being directly correlated with Bigfoot.
Yep. Yeah.
That's odd.
It is. Yeah. And then I also did a short doc about a conspiracy theorist, and now working on a feature doc about a group of conspiracy theorists. And that's another kind of...
That's another guy that was really nice guy, seemed like.
And another guy named David. He was named David, and an artist.
And an artist, yeah. Synchronicities, man.
Exactly. And he... That's... I'm not like really interested with the unraveling the conspiracies that he was interested in. It was more unraveling him and his beliefs and his psychology. Because, the conspiracies in that, they were like so out of this world, right? Like, no children died at Sandy Hook school shootings, and, everything is a false flag, and, like mind control stuff, which a lot of it, when you break it down, a lot of that stuff has precedent.
A lot of it's come true.
Yeah, like MK Ultra.
Right.
There have been false flag events like Gulf of Tonkin start the Vietnam war, and like Edward Snowden with all the surveillance. So it's easier to understand why people fall down those rabbit holes, because the government's always been lying to us in the most outrageous ways. But then it's taken to a level where it's like, oh yeah, the Jews are injecting us with microchips and drinking baby's blood and all of that, and it's like, oh well, yeah.
What do you think it is about people that draws them to those crazy conspiracies? Is there a commonality that you found that between all those people?
Yeah, I think one is that we all, there's a lot of chaos in the world. More and more so, it feels that way, because we're aware of everything that's going on, and that's scary, and it helps to try and bring order to that chaos. So if all this horrible shit is happening, like the Travis Scott concert, and you're like, why is that happening? It's more scary for some people to think that just happened, that it was a mistake and it was random versus this was a planned event, and people are controlling all of this. And so everything bad that's happening, these are people that are controlling it. And so there might be a way to break free of that control, or I know this secret knowledge and I won't be affected by this. And so I think that helps, especially when it's a little different in this country, because you could say like conspiracy theories rose when religion fell in a lot of places, but because religion was another thing that sort of brought order out of chaos. Mm-hmm. But in the United States, belief in religion hasn't fallen. It seems to be increasing.
Not in Florida. I don't know where you live.
Not in Florida.
Not on the coast. On the inland, it's probably big.
Yeah. But yeah, and
our God is Donald Trump down here.
Right. It seems like it. And then the people that so I think anyone can fall into that belief, but the people that go really deep into it, I think then there's something psychologically that's going on, and it could come from, there's studies that certain people have had trauma, and then that leads them to be suspicious of authority figures because maybe that trauma was caused by a parent or a teacher, and then it leads you to have distrust for any authority or authority figure, and usually that the largest form of that is the government. And so that trauma makes you suspicious for the rest of your life. And then there's this thing called apophenia, which is it's related to our faculty to see patterns in the world. And so that's a good thing, especially when you're like a hunter-gatherer, and you're figuring out, like, is that a deer or is that just leaves?
Or a saber-toothed tiger trying to kill me.
Yeah, exactly. But when it goes into overdrive, and especially in our culture where it's not as important, you can start seeing patterns in places that don't exist, and that spectrum goes into paranoia. If you go to the extreme end, because everything has meaning, and there's no randomness. But interestingly, that's also the spectrum towards like creativity, because like, for example, apparently like Da Vinci had big time apophenia. He would see, in the grains of wood, he would see like whole scenes, and then to him, and that could be like a painting. But if you take that too far, then it's like Facing Mars or Jesus in the Toast. Yeah, that goes into overdrive, and it seems like a lot of these people have that as well, and similar with like the numerology, like gematria. It's like where everything has numerological significance and can be broken down via numbers.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's similar.